let's go ahead and get started. So today's manuscript is it's a thing that I love. I love this kind of, there's a lot that I love about this one. It's nice and big. It has a modern binding. You can see the binding is sort of in the style of an older binding, but it's really quite, it's not new, but it's paper with a parchment here. Now the inside is a little bit older. It was written in maybe Toulouse in France between 1275 and 1299, so like the last quarter of the 13th century. The context in which it was written was probably a university, and I'll talk maybe a little bit more about that as we get into it. But it was kind of like a textbook. The texts are educational texts, they're scientific texts, so late 13th century. It is commentaries on two works by Aristotle by the Dominican friar Albertus Magnus. So Aristotle, everyone's heard of Aristotle. He wrote in like the 4th century. He was Greek. He was a great scientist, and his thinking was influential in the Middle East, in Europe, into the 17th century. And Albertus Magnus was a Dominican friar. He lived in the 13th century, so he was born at around the year 1200 and died in November of 1280. So he had a long life, and he was like the greatest scientist of his time, also a philosopher, also a bishop, right? So he was a religious person and also a very scientific person. And he was an expert on Aristotle. He commented, I think, on everything, not necessarily everything that Aristotle wrote, but everything by Aristotle that survived at his time. And this book is two of these commentaries. So we have layers, right? We have Aristotle, who wrote in Greek. We have Albertus Magnus, who was writing, 1,000 years later in Latin. I am actually not sure if he was reading it in Greek or in Latin or in Arabic, because the way that a lot of Aristotle came into the West was by way of the Middle East having been translated into Arabic, and then it was translated into Latin, and then he was commenting on it. So this isn't Aristotle's work. This is Albertus Magnus working with Aristotle and commenting on it. So let's take a look. I've been making you wait too long. And so that's one of the things I love about it. It's got these sort of layers of time, layers of people. We have ideas coming through people at different times. And then the book itself has seen a lot, right? So you will see immediately at the top, there's this damage here. And this damage is all the way through the book. So every page that we look at has more or less this. And if, believe it or not, this is less damage. This is water damage, and it has been moldy. So this is sort of mold. It's also washed some of the text away. At the bottom of the page, it's much better. And I know that some of you are interested in looking at the text, and I promise I will zoom in soon enough so we can take a closer look. So immediately, what have we got? We have 2 columns, which is the text of the commentary. We have a lot of things happening out in the margin here. It's mostly written in a sort of dark brown ink, but there is some color. There's a little bit of red and also a little blue. I will zoom in so we can take so we can see a little bit closer here. We'll see it, I think, more clearly on some following pages, but there is a little blue penwork. It's very, very light. And it could be light because it's at the start of this page. Oh, I forgot to mention, that Amy is not here, and so it's just me going today. And I just realized I didn't do my welcome. So welcome everyone to Coffee with a Codex. Who am I? My name is Dot Porter. I'm a curator in the Schoenberg Institute for Manuscript Studies, and we're looking at this manuscript. So, wow, I got that really backwards. But welcome if you're new. I usually do the welcome and introduction at the very beginning before we start looking at the book, but I was so excited. I was so excited about looking at this one. I couldn't wait. And my colleague Amy Hutchins normally joins us and manages the chat. I am watching the chat, so if you have questions, please go ahead and ask them. So I'm just going to say, let's see, I zoomed in. So the script is a Gothic script, not necessarily Gothic the way we normally think of it, which when I think of Gothic script, I think like books of hours and like very formal. This is a little less formal, but we do have the sort of lots of minims. Those are sort of ups and downs that you get there. So nice little text. One thing I noticed as I was looking through, so I mentioned that there's a little color. We've got colored initials, red initials. And then there's these little bits that sort of come at the ends of sections. And this is probably a little bit of introduction to whatever's coming in the next section. And I think that the script is distinct enough that it's a different scribe than the one who is writing the main text. The record does not say anything about numbers of scribes, so I don't know, and I am not a paleographer. A paleographer is a person who studies handwriting. I am not the expert. That's why I wish Amy was here, because she is a paleographer. Yes, Mathilde in the chat has pointed out there's many abbreviations. So let's see, I think anywhere I point, there's going to be lots of abbreviations. So medieval scribes, to save space, and I think also to save time as they're writing, would often abbreviate words, shortening them by often putting things like little macrons. Those are those little lines up here that are showing that there are letters that have been left out, and also other kinds of things. So we've got little letters written over other letters. There's another macron, the P's with sort of different kinds of decorations on them. So all of these are abbreviations that save space again and save time when the scribe is writing. Let's see, is there anything else while I'm zoomed in? Yes. So I pointed out these things that are happening in the margins. So there's different kinds of things that scribes or readers might write in a margin. One of the things that they might do is fix the text in some way. And what I'm seeing here is, if you look here, there's a little line with a dot over it here. And then when we go out in the margin, we can see there's a line and a dot. And this is saying there's something, I'm going to fix something that's here. And it looks like maybe there's a word that's been left out. And so this is a scribe indicating that we're going to put that word back in. And you see this in a lot of different kinds of texts. This one, as I mentioned, was written within the context of a university. And this is not surprising, right? This is Aristotle by way of who did I say? I'm going to say the wrong person. Albertus Magnus, yes. And he was, both very, very well known, and so it's not surprising that they're here. Now, something that I was looking at earlier was talking about the location, right? Like I said that it was, we have it as in Toulouse with a question mark. There was a university in Toulouse, and the reasoning for that has to do actually with an aspect of the paleography, if I can find it again. That is that I think letters, these large letters, are in this style, are in an Italian style, or the decoration is in an Italian style, but we'll see in a little bit that there is a small painting that's in a French style. And so one option is that the book was actually written in Italy and then taken to France, and then the little illustration was added. But it also could be that it was actually just done in southern France, which has a high Italian influence on the book making. And so that is what we've opted for in our record. But we don't know for sure because the scribe didn't actually sign it and say, I wrote this in Toulouse, which rarely happens, and it's nice when it does. One last thing I want to point out, and again, I wish Amy was here because this is so interesting to me, that this C is incredibly clear, despite that everything around it is very messy. And I can actually see, I think it doesn't show up quite as well in the photo, but the decoration around the C is, let's see, can I zoom in, is also pretty visible, at least down here. And I don't know why. I find this a little confusing, and I don't know if those of you on the chat, if anyone has ideas about why this hasn't worn, because I don't think it was drawn over. Like, it looks original to me. Maybe it just stood up particularly well to the damage. Mathilde says water-resistant binder for the red pigment. Maybe that's the best I can think of. All right, we've looked at one page. Let's look at more, because this is really fun book. And I'll zoom in again as we get in a little bit further. So, of interest, it is written on parchments, animal skin, and I'll point out some interesting things about that in a little bit. So you can see we still got this damage at the top. We have more margins, and while often when we're looking at manuscripts that look quite a bit like this, we find that the initials go back and forth between red and blue. In this case, no, all of the initials are red and all of the decoration is blue. And I'll zoom in because actually on this page, the blue is a lot more visible here. It doesn't look super blue there, but here we go. Some of this, not the most highly decorated. Again, it's a university text. It's like a textbook, but still, someone made some effort to make this an attractive book. It is visibly ruled. So if you look here in particular, I'm looking down here, the ruling lines go across the two columns. And then if we look out to the margin, we see our friends, the prick marks. And so this is how the scribes drew the lines, or not the scribes, but whoever was setting up the page used those as guides to make the lines. The lines here are numbered with Arabic numerals, and my understanding from reading through some of the stuff that's in addition to the record is that this was the Oxford practice. So you would have seen this at Oxford University. Therefore, you're going to see it at the other universities too as that spreads. Let's see in the comments. Lisa, some inks soaked deeper into the parchment too. So it could be something about that red ink that just makes it hold on a little better. Abigail, the rubrication at the top is faded like the rest of the ink versus the initial. Is there any reason for thinking it could be a different red ink used for initials versus rubrication? So I noticed that too. So if we go back to the top, so there's the red ink of the initial here, and then this one, and then there are also headers across so we're in book 1, right? So we have a 1 here at the top. That's actually better. That's not as worn. This is more worn. If we go back to, I think the first page, there was red here. I think that's a really good idea, that it was just different red ink and some of it held on a little bit better. And John says, I believe it's the case that certain sources of red pigment are more resistant than others, resistant than other pigments. Yeah, that's a good point. So the ink itself, it could be something with the recipe. It could be that whatever it was made with, in one case, held on better than others. And it's probably not purposeful by the people who were making the ink. They were probably just making the red ink that they made, and it just so happens that some of it holds on better than others. I'm going to scoot down here. So one of the things I love to do, I am a codicologist at heart. That means I'm really into the book as object. So I love things like this. So I said this is made of parchment. Parchment is made by taking animal skin and soaking it in lye and then scraping it off, and you put it on a frame and you stretch it, and the edges get stretched. And usually they get trimmed off, but sometimes they don't. And so here is an example of maybe an armpit of this animal that is remaining here. And we'll see more of those stretched. Here's another one down here, a little stretched corner there. And this actually tells you something about the making of this book. That is that whoever had it made, it would be more expensive to trim all of the edges off, to have perfect edges. And so there was some kind of decision made about, well, I need it to be big, and so I'm going to put up with these corners and not worry about it too much. So that's kind of interesting. There's also very little color. I mean, there's red and blue, but there's no gold there. So, but I have seen manuscripts, in fact, we have some in our collection that have these kinds of edges and also have a lot of gold, which is sort of interesting. Like, this is the decisions that they're making. So I'm just going to keep sort of going through. Oh, so the texts, I get so caught up in the physical thing, I don't think too much about the text. So the texts that are being commented on here are, again, it's two Aristotle. So the first one is the book on generation and corruption. So like making and unmaking. And I don't know a whole lot about the original text, but I do know that it focuses on the idea of matter. And for Aristotle, it was always, he seemed to have like systems that he would sort of come up with. And so there's this idea that all matter is what? Earth, air, fire, and water. And so it's all about sort of those things and how they change form. So things burn and water becomes ice and this kind of thing. So that's what Magnus is, can I call him Magnus? That seems weird. Albertus Magnus is commenting on in this first section. Now, the damage here has gotten so bad, and we'll see this a little bit more too, that the top has actually been replaced by later parchment. Now, we didn't do this. This happened before we got here, probably, I don't know, late 19th or early 20th century, but this is parchment that's been sort of laid in to keep the pages whole. There. Murray, Albertus Magnus equals Big Bert, you know? I will never think of him the same way again. Let's see. So I'm just going to keep going. The whole manuscript kind of looks like this, except for the one thing that we will get to very quickly. Let's see. Kristen. Oh, this is a good question. So the other commentary is the Meteorology, and that's most of this book is the Meteorology, and that is, as the name implies, looking at weather things. And like my understanding is that when Aristotle wrote this, you know, it was like the first time someone had written about things like earthquakes, which is pretty interesting. So there's also geology in there. Right. And so Kristen's question, do you have a sense if the two commentaries were originally intended to be bound together? So let's take a look. Let me see where, all right, 23 verso. There should be numbers. Here we go. Okay, so this is the end of the first commentary. And then there's this blank page here. Let me zoom out a little bit so we can see it a little better. All right, and then there's this blank page. And then the next one starts, it looks like with a kind of table of contents of some kind. And if we look here, you can see there's a gap. That's because these are physically distinct, right? The book is made up of sheets of parchments that have been folded together to make a little booklets that are then sewn together. So here are here's a booklet here, and here's another one. And there's also a gap. Well, you can't really see it, but I promise there's a gap there. And you see this little letter or words down here. It's hard to tell, right, because this has been covered over, but this should be the same words that start the next column. And this is how we know that this book has been bound in the right order. And so this is physically distinct, which means that it could have been separate and then bound together. I think if we look at it, it looks very similar here. It's it was certainly made by the same shop. Whether or not it was made to be bound together is a little more difficult to say. I mean, they're pretty clearly, very similar, but not, but it's possible they were made in the same shop and then somebody came along and said, well, I want those too. So sorry, I don't have a better answer for you. Let's see, there's a little bit more in the chat. Heidi's asking, are all the scholia in the same hand? Any idea of date? So she's asking about the marginal notes. I haven't been paying a whole lot of attention to them. To my eye, they look like the same. Actually, I'm going to tell you what I thought the first time I looked at this, because to my eye, they look like the same hand consistently. These do. And they don't look like this hand to me, but they do look like or similar to this one. And I don't know what that means, because again, I'm not a paleographer. So I would really be interested to know, for someone who knows more than me to take a look and see if I am onto something here. Because I don't think that the person who is doing the rubrics is the same scribe who is writing the main text. I do think those are two different people. Whether or not that one is in the, whether it's the same person who's doing the thing is there. Oh, yes, Matilda pointed out the tiny person. I wasn't ignoring him. I was just talking about something else. So here is the only illustration in this manuscript. There is no gold. It isn't illuminated, right? It's just a little illustration. And this is the one that is in the French style, I am told. Yes, it is a monk. It is a Dominican monk with the black and the white and the tonsure, right? And he's got his little finger up. I've seen other pictures of Dominicans. I don't know if that's a specifically Dominican thing, but that is that. And it's possible, because Albertus Magnus was a Dominican, that this is actually supposed to be Albertus himself. And this is interesting to me, maybe it'll be interesting to you. You can see clearly that this has been painted over. It's sort of come over the text here. So the text was definitely written first, and the illustration was put in after, which is, again, very, very typical. Order of operations. So the order of operations would have been the scribe came through and wrote first, and then someone did the decorated initials and the, I'm not saying the same person did this, but like someone did that and someone did the rubrics, and then an artist would do this. So potentially lots of different people. John is saying gesture of speaking, teaching as a Dominican, and I think that's right. There is a thumbs up, so I'm thinking that this is a thing. I love it because I have seen that in other manuscripts of Dominicans. There was a question about the numbers between the columns, and I think they are line numbers or section, they're line numbers. So 20, 29, 30, 20, I don't think that's supposed to be 20, maybe 25, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. Now again, this is a text for the university, so it's possible that the numbers were put in. This could have been the professor's book, and then, or the instructor's book, and then he can say, okay, I'm talking about line 30, and then all the students can kind of look and say, oh yes, line 30, and I know what he's talking about. I am aware that we are just at the beginning of meteorology, and it's almost time to go. But let's, I'll page through a little bit more just so you can see a little more. There's somewhat less damage at the top, although it's still quite a bit there. Let's see, Kristen, do you have any idea why there might only be the one illustration? I've seen another 13th century copy of the Albertus Meteora that had illustrations at the beginning of each section in Aristotle's Meteorology. So I would guess that it is maybe a combination of things. My first thought is that it's a financial decision, that it would have been expensive to put in more illustrations, and so they've got the one sort of, if it is Albertus Magnus, it's sort of in reference to him, referential, which is kind of neat. And the condition of the parchment, and I don't mean the damage, but I mean the edges that, clear. This isn't great parchment, basically, is what I'm saying, is another sort of financial decision. So I think that the person who had this made was making decisions, and that only having one illustration was probably part of that. And that maybe the copy that you've seen, I'd be curious to know how else, like maybe it's on better parchment, maybe it has more color. Actually, I'm just noticing, look at this, we've got blue and red, which we didn't have in the first section, who asked about the two being put together. So this is actually a difference between the two sections. The other one only had red initials, so I don't know. And we're just about out of time, so I'm gonna have to think about that some more. One last question. I think it was Mathilde asked if we know that the conservation work was made at the same time the book was rebound. I don't know, but that would make a lot of sense, because when the book was rebound, it would have been taken apart, which would have actually, yes. So I'm looking, this is the last sheet of the choir, and now I'm gonna go look at the first sheet of the choir, which is over here, and I wanna look at this parchment that comes across. It goes all the way across through the gutter and out over here. So this is one sheet, one piece of parchment that's been pasted over. This work could only be done when this book was unbound. So this book would have to be completely disbound for this work to be done. And it would make sense for that to happen when it was put into this paper binding. So yes, so there's that. John is actually adding a really good addition to what I was saying about why it only has one illustration. He says possibly due to different audiences / purposes, working study copy versus display. So it could be that the other one was more a display copy, and this one is, which I think we've seen, is like, this is like clearly for the classroom. So great, thank you, John. That's a great addition. Thank you, everyone. This was great, and I'll be back next week. I hope you all have a great week, and take care, and I'll see you then.